So, good evening, everyone. Good evening, teachers, and welcome. My name is Elisa Caligiana, and on behalf of Zanichelli Editore, I welcome you to this webinar entitled Fun Fillers, Review, Revitalize and Rapport Building in the Socially Distant Classrooms. Um, Today, to talk with us about this interesting topic, we have Helen Dodd, and she is the secondary coordinator of the British Council in Milan. And with over 15 years experience teaching Italian students of all ages, Helen currently supports the delivery of the Secondary Plus product, so Scuola Media and Scuola Superiore, and related teacher training in Milan. She is originally from Manchester, and she worked for the Deutsche Bank for 10 years before swapping the trading floor for the classroom, qualifying as an English teacher at the UCL London before moving to Italy. Helen has also two children studying in Prima and Seconda Media in Pavia, so I'm sure she can relate to all of you and she can perfectly understand our audience. So, Helen, I think we can start. And so I give you the word. And before going on, let me just remind you that you can feel free to interrupt us whenever you want. You can write your questions in the chat. And so I will ask Helen right away and read them out loud for you, for Helen. And then otherwise, we will have our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So go ahead, Helen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elisa. So, as Elisa said, today we're talking about fun fillers. We'll be talking about what they are, why you might not want to use them, and how we can persuade you to use them. And we've got some great examples that are specifically designed for using in the current context, in the socially distanced classroom, which is the students with masks with 1 meter apart, because this is an extra complication for us all. And hopefully by the end of the session, you will feel inspired. You will have picked up at least one new idea, and then you'll have a little fun with your classes. Okay, and as Elisa said, feel free to interrupt at any time and ask me if I'm going too quickly or if there's something that isn't clear. Okay, so the first thing is, what is a filler? So a filler is an activity that you can use to fill the time between the stages of a lesson. You can use it to change the pace of the lesson, to vary interaction patterns, so to change it from teacher, student to student, student. And also, if you by any chance finish all your lesson material a little bit early, you can use it to exploit that 10 minutes of the end of the class and make it useful. In planning, we sometimes call it a flexi stage. By this, we mean that you put it in your lesson plan, but if you don't have time to do it, you can move it to the next lesson or you can leave it out completely. And if you do it at the beginning, it's often known as a warmer, and it's also used to help students switch from L1 to L2, so from Italian to English, just to switch their brain around. Okay, why should we use fillers? Well, we can use fillers to review language, which is particularly useful. I know that a lot of teachers have told me that it's particularly difficult teaching English at the moment, where in your classrooms you have lots of different levels. Maybe some kids are coming to Scuola Media, to Prima Media with very little English background. Others have been having private lessons, maybe individual or in groups. So within your classroom, you have a lot of different levels. And so we can use fillers to review language. We can use it for differentiation, to address this issue. And also we can use it to build confidence, maybe with some of the weaker students. We can use it we can use them to revitalize the lesson. They're engaging, they're motivating, and they boost energy, depending when your lesson is. If you have the last lesson of the morning, I'm sure the students are flagging a little bit, so a few games can help to energize your classroom. And of course, if the students are enjoying themselves and they're having fun, this can help build rapport. We're very aware that the students who are in Prima, Seconda Media Perhaps they haven't had the opportunity, perhaps they've never even seen each other without a mask. And so by including some games, some fillers in the classroom, we can help them to make friends. We can create a positive learning experience and encourage teamwork and collaboration. So these are some of the reasons why we can use them.
And I think, sorry, I think this is particularly useful. I mean, in these moments, no, when we are really, it's a really delicate situation, and especially this thing of the report building, I think it's very, very useful. And so, yeah, also to
Yeah.
try and regain
Yeah,
some
because you know, even if they're sitting in a row and they're 1 meter apart, you can still create teamwork using some of these fillers, as we'll see going forward. And so, some of the reasons why teachers might not want to use them, maybe they feel that it takes too long to prepare. All of the fillers that we suggest today come with very limited or no preparation. And in my experience, it's definitely worth it. Maybe the first few times you play, you have to set it up. But after a couple of times you've played, they really become worth it, worth the time. Another issue that teachers report is having no IT or unreliable IT. We've all had the experience where you spend hours planning a lesson and you get to school and the Wi-Fi doesn't work and you can't do the game. So we've also taken that into consideration. And all of the games used today, all of the fillers used today are IT free. Of course, there are IT versions, but we've chosen the IT free versions today. Another issue is that teachers feel they have no time within the lesson, that they have too much lesson material to get through. In many cases, the fillers can be used instead of a gap fill in the book. Instead of the practice material in the book, you could replace it with one of these fillers. So that could help there. No ideas? Well, hopefully after today's session, you'll have plenty of ideas. Too many ideas, maybe. And another barrier is the classroom setup, the current situation. But again, with each of the activities, we'll talk about how we can get around this issue. So I think fillers are great, and I think that they're great because they're flexible. So you can use them as a standalone activity. You can use them to review something you've done the lesson before, or maybe you want to review something before going into something else. So maybe before you want to start the present continuous, for example, you want to double check the verb to be. So you can do a quick filler on the verb to be before moving on to the next stage, or they can support the core activity, so they can actually practice what you're teaching. You can use them to settle or stir. So by this, I mean if the class are a little bit energized, if they're a bit lively, then you can use it to settle them, or you can use it to boost energy. Fillers usually boost energy more than settle, but they can do both. They create diversity within lesson segments, so they can give you lesson balance. If you've had a more serious, focused grammar exercise, then you can change the focus of the lesson to have some speaking or some listening or some review. Okay, we can also use fillers to help manage fast finishers or early finishers. And what I mean by this is that if you have some stronger students in the class, if you've taught them how to do the fillers, then you can quickly ask them to get on with that. I'll give you an example later with the 1 minute lists, for example. Or perhaps if they've done a reading, they can circle the words they don't know, and then they can get into the habit of making sentences with those words. So we can use fillers to help manage, to help balance the levels within the classroom. And importantly, they allow you to move on in the syllabus while continuing to reinforce the language learned. We all have a course book to get through, a syllabus to get through, and at times you need to move on, even though you know that perhaps some of the students in the class haven't fully fully taken on board what you've been teaching. So fillers allow you to constantly review and to remind students of things that they've learned throughout the year. Okay. And the main part of our fillers session today is also that they're fun. And so what makes something fun? So we thought about this and came up with one very important aspect is knowing what you're doing. Okay, so it's really important to keep it simple, to keep the rules simple, and to make it a routine part of your lesson. You know, if you say bingo, let's play bingo, and everybody, hey, immediately they know they have to draw their table and they understand immediately, then this is fun. We've all played, is it Risico? And the rules are so complicated that actually I've never played it. Another aspect of keeping something engaging is discovery. If you have to guess something, this makes it fun. So hangman is the classic. If you put the dashes on the board and ask them to guess the word, it's instantly more entertaining. Color, you know, I always think that there is no activity in the classroom that isn't improved by colored paper. You can take the most boring gap fill and put it on yellow paper, and it's instantly a fun exercise. Something else that makes it more fun is the time limit. This keeps it dynamic, keeps your lesson pacey. If you have to write an essay, you have to write a story in half an hour, it can be a tiring activity. If you have to write a story in 1 minute, this encourages creativity and makes it much more fun for the students. I think it takes away the pressure that they might feel that they have to do something amazing. And another aspect is music. And in fact, if any of you have played Kahoot, Kahoot is essentially a multiple choice exercise. But you have the color, you have the time limit, you have music, and students love it.
And talking about color, this makes me think also like all books, like in general, are like very colorful when it comes to languages. So that can also help. I mean, for sure, it's an energy booster. That's very true.
Absolutely. You know, and if you give them a piece of yellow paper, it's instantly recognizable in their book, and it's like, ooh, you know, it's memorable. It's memorable as well. Okay. Are there any questions so far, or we can move on?
There was one. But we're going a little bit backwards to the part. Roberta is asking if what about the shyest students? I mean, sometimes if you want to involve them, they can also be a little bit like not too self-confident and not to participate in this kind of activities.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think a little bit like the time limit. If you're playing a game, the pressure is taken off you. And so I think that students who are shy, they're much more willing to participate in a game than perhaps they're afraid that they're going to give the wrong answer and the teacher might, you know, mark them down for that. Where if it's a game, of course, they might be a little bit worried about letting their teammates down, but generally speaking, as long as the teacher keeps the mood light, that it is just a game and it's not about the winning, then I think that the shy students are encouraged to participate. So I think it really helps with that. And as we said before, you know, it encourages this teamwork and rapport building, and I think that helps in the classroom. Also, a lot of the activities, because they're enjoying themselves, if they're worried about their pronunciation or, you know, it's not a test, it's a game. So I think that the fillers really encourage the shy students. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, and our last point about what makes something fun is the reward. So everybody likes to win, but as I said, it's something that teachers need to be a little bit careful of. And it's something that we have to manage, because the point system, the points are very, very important to the students. We're focusing on the practicing the vocabulary, practicing the grammar. The students are focused on winning the game. And so it's always better to give points in teams. It's always better to start again from the beginning. Don't try to carry points on throughout lessons. It becomes really challenging for the teacher. And so, yeah, be careful with the points. It can be used usefully. For example, you can give extra points for unique words. But again, the students are quite sensitive about the points, and how fair you are. So include reward, but with caution. Okay. So I always tend to start off my lessons with some questions. I start off with some questions that could be based on the previous lesson, or they could be based on the topic that we're about to start. And this is fantastic actually for me, because we go in and immediately the students are speaking together, and it also gives me a few minutes to gather my thoughts. But in order to make it more engaging, you can blank out the grammar or the vocabulary, and you can do this with an image, something that will make the students laugh, something that they can relate to. I don't know, maybe some music that they like, or a game that they like. And if you're not sure what they like, then you can always use a banana, because everybody loves a banana. Although somebody recently suggested to me that monkeys are also good. Otherwise, you can just blank them with a dot. I don't know the program that you use. Personally, I use Active Inspire, and you can just put a dot on the screen and move it away so that the students can guess. And this means that you're reviewing the vocabulary, but at the same time, you're warming your lesson up and getting the students speaking English. So this is the warmer filler. We also have the songs as a filler. And I personally almost always start a lesson with a song, because I like to set the mood of the lesson. I like to boost their energy, and I want them to enjoy their lesson, and using music is a good way to do that. I like songs because they're flexible. You can choose the song based on the grammar or the vocabulary that is within the song, or you can use it to introduce a topic. For sure, if you're doing clothes, for sure you can find a song about clothes. I know there's one. I'm sure there's one. Songs, by their very nature, songs are memorable. They can help with pronunciation, because the repetition of language within the song creates its automatic drilling. The repetition of the vocabulary that you're trying to teach. And again, this can help with students who are a little bit embarrassed. If they're embarrassed of their pronunciation, if they're listening to a song and they're singing it, and they don't have to sing, you can chant it, you can say it. And if they're doing it as a class, then it's much easier for them they don't feel quite so self-conscious if there's a song in the background. Okay, one of the things that a lot of teachers are put off using songs is because the language in the song is too complicated. So maybe you have a really catchy chorus. So for example, You Are My Universe. And this is actually the Coldplay You Are My Universe is a really good example, because half of the song is in Korean. And it's a really good example that shows you don't have to understand all of the words to enjoy the song. And so as a teacher, you can focus on the chorus, or you can focus on just one line. You can even maybe just use the video. Okay, so recent examples that I've used with the Scuola Media students are Billie Eilish for I Am, followed up very quickly by Coldplay with You Are. So I Am and You Are. Coldplay are great. I think they actually use the English textbooks to write their songs. So we've got You've Got a Higher Power. And a recent song that I hear a lot on the radio at the moment is We're Never Going Home. And again, this is a good example where you can use the video, where the students watch the video and they write down what the people are doing. So don't be put off songs by the complicated vocabulary. You can still use them, because I think it's really nice that then students are in the car, they're playing their video games, and they can hear this song and they recognize it, and they're practicing it themselves at home. Okay.
And it can also, I think, help the rapport building between teachers and students, right? Because
Yeah.
you can suggest like a song which is really, I don't know, something that you are listening currently, and so I mean, it means that teachers also are up to date, and they want
Yeah.
to share also their world, because
And they'll tell you. They'll come to class and they'll tell you, can we do this song? And so then you have to check that there are no swear words, and then you can do it. So I think they like it. And also, quite embarrassingly, you find that a lot of the old songs come back. So for example, Bonnie Tyler in Frozen. So there were songs from the 80s that the kids know. And also, even if it is a really old song, even if it's kind of embarrassing and it's something that their grandma listens to, they still like it, they still enjoy it. And so, and it also helps you as the teacher. It's nice if you're engaged in the lesson. And so now we're going to have a little look at some fillers for recycling vocabulary, as this is a major part of the syllabus. And as you probably know, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of fillers. If you do a search on Google, you will find hundreds of them. Some of the more popular ones you probably already know. There's hangman, a spelling race, unscramble the words, taboo. And many of these can be found in this document, which we will share at the end of the presentation. This is something that you can find on the internet, but it's really useful and explains some of these fillers. The fillers that we've chosen today are based on their flexibility, their ease of setup, and the fact that there's no preparation required. This is a big thing for me. So they are basically all low maintenance but high fun. Okay, so we will start with our first. This is the number one. The number one for teachers in Milan was noughts and crosses. And you can play this. I'm assured that you can play this with literally anything, any grammar, any vocabulary, anything. Okay, you have to divide your class into teams. So you have your noughts team and your crosses team. And the noughts team will choose their square. So choose number one, and the teacher asks the question, and if they get it right, they get their circle in the square. And the objective is obviously to have 3 noughts or 3 crosses. So here we are, we have an example here where the crosses team are about to win, and they have the question, people is afraid of spiders. They have to say if it's correct or not. And if they win, if they get it right, then they win the game. And so, in effect, really, the maximum number of questions here is 9. And so the teacher can prepare these questions, or they can think of them. And at a very basic level, you can just do the word. You can give them the definition, and they have to give you the word. Even as simple as you're practicing clothes, and you can tell them it begins with C. It begins with C and ends in T, and they have to tell you it's coat. You can also do the grammar rule with true or false. And so, as I said, I've been assured by the staff at the British Council Milan that this is the number one filler. Okay. A personal favorite of mine is the 1-minute list. And so I like it because the time limit keeps it dynamic. Its flexibility is what makes it popular, well, certainly with me. Okay, because you can use it to review vocabulary. You can review it. You can use it to see what they already know about before you start to teach. So your teach, test, teach. And you can also use it to introduce a new topic. So it doesn't have to just be about the vocabulary. It could be about a place. So for example, you're going to do a reading about Paris. You want to engage them, think to before they do the reading, and you can ask them to write down everything they know about Paris. So you're engaging them with the topic. Okay, once they've written the list and you've reviewed the list, they can also categorize the list, they can rank them, and this is a way to activate their higher order thinking skills. So how do you do it? Basically, you tell the class they have 1 minute to write down all the words they can, and they can do this in teams, they can do it in pairs, or they can do it individually. The best way to review them, I find, is to ask them get them to count the words, ask them who has the highest number of words, and get them to read that out. And so as they're reading their long list, the others in the class have to listen, so they're activating their listening skills, and cross off the words they hear. So the next team should only have 3, 4, 5 words. And so you go round until all the words have been read out. Okay. And it only takes a few minutes, and it's really easy to set up. You say, okay, 1 minute, write down everything you know about Paris. Okay, the next one is a great one, especially for the younger kids, although everybody likes doing it. So when you teach vocabulary, you have to add an action to the word, because if the words or even the grammar point, if it has an action, then you can easily on the spot activate the receptive and productive skills. And by this, what I mean is, so if, for example, you teach coat and you add the action. So when you teach coat, you shiver and you put on your coat. The next time, if you say coat, the kids have to listen, and then they show that they've understood by shivering and putting on their coat. And of course, one student will do it, and then the others will see and copy. But then you can also use it the other way around, that you shiver and put on your coat, and the students say it. So you're actively encouraging the productive skills. And you can do this teacher to student, or you can encourage student to student. The actions don't have to be whole total body, total physical response. They can just be fingers and thumbs. So if you teach 10 words, if you have your coat, your hat, your scarf, your gloves, and all you have to do is hold up your thumb, and the students will say coat. So you hold up the second one, the scarf. And so you have to remember them, but the act of remembering them will activate their memory, and it helps. Okay. So the next one is chains. It's also sometimes called end-to-end. And this is where the word starts with the last letter of the previous word. So the first student in the class says apple. The second one says, okay, it's finished in E. So, they have to think about it. They have to listen, they have to think about the spelling, and they have to think about the next word. However, having tried this, it can be difficult for lower levels, because it's surprising the number of words that end in E and R, and there's a limit to how many words lower levels actually know that begin with E and R. And in fact, I got as far as elephants, ears, I don't know, any other words beginning with E. And so you could use the same idea from a vocabulary set, or all the words beginning with a chosen letter, the same phoneme, or the same number of syllables or adjectives. Essentially, it's similar to the 1 minute list, but it's oral rather than written. Okay, and to do it, you start at the front of the class and work around, or you can do the alphabet. You can start at the back, and you can give a time limit, and points can be given. I mean, I guess the issue is not if somebody can't think of a word, doesn't matter. Move on to the next student. It's important that it's a game and not a pressure. Okay, so this one is definitely my favorite. My favorite is bingo because it can be adapted to vocabulary or grammar. It's incredibly easy to set up, and it's also great for practicing spelling, which is really important because, as we know, English spelling is not the easiest. Okay, so you need a defined set of words or phrases, and these can be defined even by your textbook. In your textbook, you have the clothes. I think I'm using clothes because my son is studying clothes at the moment, and the students draw in their notebooks. They draw a grid of either 6 or 9. 6 is easier. 6 is quicker, and so you put on your board, you'll put your defined set of words, or you'll say, okay, page 12 of the book, all the words on page 12. And they choose their 6 words from their page. And the teacher, in traditional bingo, you would say coat and they cross off coat. In classroom bingo, you can play it that way if you want, or you can give the definition and the students cross off the word. It's fantastic, for example, with practicing past simple or past participle. So you say speak, but they've written spoke, so they have to listen to the present simple and cross out the past simple. And basically, as soon as they've crossed off all the words, they shout bingo. If you want to make it more fun, they can shout banana or any other word that the class finds amusing. Okay, have I explained that? Was that clear? Or
Yes, absolutely.
because it's one of those games that's kind of, once you've played it a couple of times, it's really, really simple. And as I said, I particularly like it because it practices spelling.
And of course, I guess once you've explained it the first time, of course, it's going to
Yeah.
be more and more easy. I mean,
Yeah.
easier and easier.
And you don't have to just play it one time. So when they've done 6 and one student's won, you play again. You can play 2 or 3 times with the same set. So they're practicing their spelling again and again and again in an entertaining way.
Yeah, they won't notice probably.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. They're so busy playing bingo that they're not realizing that they're writing them. They're just copying the words. And so, and the faster they do it, maybe the first time you let them copy from the book, maybe the second time you take the book away and they have to do it from memory. And so, okay, here's another one, another oldie but goodie. So I spy with my little eye. One of the problems with I Spy in the classroom is that you more or less have exactly the same objects in the classroom, which can make it good because you're repeating the language every time, and eventually you say, "What? I spy with my little eye something beginning with W," and they're like, "Yeah, window. Okay, move on." But what you can do to get around that is to put an image on the IWB, so you've got some more vocabulary options. How you play, the teacher starts with I spy with my little eye, something beginning with P. Students guess pencil, and the student with the correct answer says the next I spy and on. If you want to make it easier for lower levels, you can play I spy, something beginning with the letter in English and the letter in Italian, and this can help them to make the connection. And so that can make it slightly easier and therefore more fun. And this one is cloud, if you're wondering what that is.
We have a comment on that. Claudia is
Okay.
saying that she likes very much these ideas. And she says some of these games, like I Spy, are typically British. So it's like teaching aspects of culture too. And that's also a good observation.
I didn't know that. Do you not have it? Do you not have I Spy in Italian?
I don't actually.
No. Well, it's the classic car game. It's actually what in England what we play in the car, which is why you've got the
Okay.
cloud. because you're sitting in the car and you look out the window, and so it's
I
so
knew the
that's
one with the letters, like the elephant ears and like
haha.
the chain, the letter chain.
Well,
That's
the
another
chain
car
one,
game.
yeah, the chain one also comes from. I went to the shop. Oh, no, maybe I went to the shop is a little bit more like one of the next games. So I'll elaborate on that in a minute. Okay, so yeah, so try I Spy. So this one, all the previous ones have been more practicing vocabulary and maybe grammar. If we want to encourage students with their speaking, again, this is great for the shy students. So we're trying to activate a little bit more speaking rather than yes, no, don't know, good. So you can ask students, if you have 5 minutes at the end of the lesson, you can ask them even silly questions, really. You know, would you rather drive a tractor or a Ferrari? And then ask them to explain why. You know, I think it's important to keep it light. You know, it doesn't really matter what their answer is. You know, would you rather swim with a penguin or a dolphin? You know, it doesn't, maybe you don't know why. Maybe you prefer the penguin, but you don't know why. But engaging the students perhaps to explain which they would rather do. And you can get students into the habit of asking each other as well. So that's quite a nice one. We also have the 20 questions, where you think of an object and the students ask yes, no questions until they discover the answer. And the questions are all quite low level. And if you want to make the game easier, you can set the parameters for the objects. So for example, it has to be in this room, or it has to be an animal, or it has to be something that we've studied. I think that this is really interesting and useful for the students, because our students spend an awful lot of time answering questions. You know, they go home, they open their book, and they have to answer the questions. Having the opportunity to ask the questions and practice asking questions. You know, I often find that you have students at really high levels and they still make mistakes in asking questions because they don't have enough practice. So I think this is a really nice way for them to do that.
Talking about
Icebreaker.
sorry to interrupt you. Talking
No.
about culture, Anto is suggesting us a game which is actually quite common in the Italian culture, which is
Mm-hmm.
È arrivato un bastimento carico carico di. I don't know if you know if you've ever
Oh,
heard of it, but it's similar to what you were saying about the I Spy.
okay. I will look it up. I'll look
And
it up afterwards, and then I'll
she's
adapt
saying
it
it's a very
and
old
steal
one,
it.
but I'd say it's quite actual.
What's it called again?
Un bastimento carico di. È arrivato, it's like a boat is coming and it's full of, and then you say the
Ah,
object and
no. So
like,
this is the same. So this is what I was going to say, that it's similar to this next game, Icebreaker. So I think what we have in England is I went to the shop. I went to the shop and I bought an apple. And then the next student says, I went to the shop and I bought an apple and a banana. And then the next one, I went to the shop and I bought an apple, a banana, and a cake.
yeah, it's the same
And
logic.
so you have to remember it. So maybe it's similar to that. And so Icebreaker is a game called Icebreaker because it's usually used as a getting to know you activity. The students stand in a circle. The first student has a ball and says something about themselves, and then they throw the ball to the next student, who has to repeat what the first student said and add something about themselves, and so on. And the reason why I quite like this one is because you've got the listening and repeating. So it's encouraging their collaborate. You know, it's making sure that they're actually listening to each other. A lot of the others have listening too because they have to listen for the last letter, but this one in particular, they have to repeat it. And the issue with the socially distanced classroom is the throwing the ball and probably the standing in a circle, depending on your space. But you can certainly just point, you can use names, or the students can stand, and when they've pointed, then they sit down when they finish their turn. And it can be simplified by saying words or examples of grammar. So for example, here we could have Peter. Peter says, I've got a cat. And then Peter sits down and Carlo says, Peter's got a cat and I've got a dog. And then Carlo sits down and then the next student says, Carlo's got a dog, I haven't got a pet. So you have to repeat what you've heard before and pass it on. So here we're repeating, I've got. And so that's quite a useful one. This one is possibly for higher levels. It's used to encourage students to speak for longer. In most exams higher levels, students have to speak for at least 1 minute, if not 2. And so this is a way to get them used to being able to speak for that length of time. And basically, they have a piece of string. You can also just use a yo-yo. And they have to wind the string. And they can't stop speaking until the string is fully wound. And so I was thinking that some of the activities they have to do is, for example, describe their bedroom or talk about their family. And so to avoid I have a mum, I have a dad, I have a brother, I have a dog, if they have to continue talking until the string is finished, then this can encourage that.
This is a challenging one.
No, it is difficult, but it's an important skill. It's an important skill if the students want to take the pet. And so, and as they get further up the chain, it is difficult, but it's also fun. You know, it's not like they can see how much time they've got, and so they have to keep thinking of another thing and another thing and another thing. So in my bedroom, I've got blue walls, and there's a picture and a bed, and so it encourages them to keep talking. And I think this is the last one. We have the story starters. So if you have a few minutes at the end of the lesson, you can give them a sentence and they have 1 minute to finish the story. They can do this on their own. They can do it in pairs. They can do it orally. They can write it. But I think it's to make sure it's a filler rather than an activity. If you give the time limit, then this encourages creativity and it keeps it fun. And so, and you know, who knows what they come up with, but I'm sure they'll come up with something amusing that the class can then enjoy. Okay. Are there any questions about any of the fillers before we move on to the ultimate filler?
So far, I cannot see them, but we can give them some time to think about them. And
yeah, absolutely. And while people are thinking, if we can, Elisa, do you want to ask them to go to Kahoot while I open the Kahoot?
Yes, you can digit on your mobile phones. You can look up for KAHOOT.IT, and then when you will enter the first screen, we will have to digit a PIN number, a PIN code that now Helen is going to give us, and I will tell them to you. I will tell it to you.
Okay, it's coming.
And yes, you can also find it in the chat. Yes, in a moment we're going to see it. So the number is 3916814.
Okay, and we're playing this.
I want to play too.
Yeah, and so we're playing this because although it does involve technology and it does involve a little bit of preparation, it is the ultimate filler. And it ticks all the boxes that we were talking about before. So we have music, we have color, we have points, and we can use this to, you can use it at the beginning of the lesson to see what the students know already. Again, as I said, you can activate the schema on the topic, or you can use it at the end of the lesson to check learning. And I wanted to include it today because I know it's one of those games that people hear about, and everybody's heard about Kahoot. But perhaps until you've actually played it, perhaps you're put off put off doing it in the classroom. And I know of at least one teacher this week who's used it for assessment, because I don't know if you know that the teacher receives an Excel spreadsheet. You can download at the end of the game, you can download a spreadsheet, and it gives the teacher detailed information about which student has answered which questions correctly or not. So you can use it for assessment purposes, or you can just use it for a filler at the end of your lesson for fun. Okay, shall we
Yep.
start?
I think we can.
I think as we're playing, you still have the number at the bottom. So if anybody is still coming in, they can do that. Okay, so guys, this is the Fun Fillers Kahoot. It's a difficult one, this one. Because also my question doesn't specify whether it's the best reason for the teacher or for the student. Okay, but I think the flexibility for us is definitely a good reason, but I think the best reason is that it's engaging for the students. Okay, ooh, fastest finger, Valentina. There we go. Let's see. What can ruin the game? Okay, yeah, absolutely. The complicated rules. If it's overcomplicated, then that spoils the fun. I don't know if you know as well that you can change the time limit on how long students have to answer the question. So you can just have 10 seconds or 20 seconds or longer, depending on how difficult your questions are. Oh, there we go. Okay, and I love this one because they're all correct, so that everybody's a winner. So you can also do like this because it's nice. Okay, Valentina's still in the lead. This one is a tricky one. Okay. Fantastic, good. Oh, Valentina! So Elisa's taken over. And Julia. Looks like Julia's moving up too. Okay, and here's the last question. I hope nobody's going to choose the wrong answer. Who said no? Okay, so, and here we have our reward. So, Julia, well done in third position. Valentina, you kept the top spot for a long time, but then Elisa, and so you can have your students do a little dance, and that's all very nice. I won't make you dance today. And so this is Kahoot, and I don't know if you enjoyed that, but I certainly enjoyed that.
I did. I've actually never played. So.
You see, it's one of those things that you hear
I mean,
about,
I knew it, but I've never played it. So, and it's true. It's a good sum, I would say, of all that you've said. I mean, it has colors, it has the music, it has the energy, the adrenaline, a little bit, the time. So
yeah, and it's very easy to it's really not difficult to set up. And once you've created the quizzes, you can use them again and again and again. So you can play them one week and then you can play them again a month later. So they're great for reviewing. Okay, now I have to figure out how to, if I close this, I have to go back here.
And
no?
in the meantime, we received a question. I mean, it was there before, but I just left it to this moment because it was maybe more, it was better to like sum up, let's say, what we've said so far. Samantha asked, how do you usually organize a 1 hour lesson with these fillers? So I don't know if you have like an ideal structure, and yes, how
Yeah.
you usually use them.
I think, as I said before, I personally always start the lesson with the questions with some words blanked out, whether it's the grammar, whether it's the auxiliary verb, or whether it's the vocabulary. I almost always start a lesson with some questions because I think it helps them as well. It helps them to build rapport. So they can be very simple questions. Usually I do the present simple, the past, what what did you eat for dinner yesterday? Have you studied for any tests? Something that is using the grammar or the vocabulary, or something that helps them speak to each other. So they're also continuing to get to know each other. I very often use songs, as I said. But yeah, I would definitely start off with the questions. Then we would go into the lesson, and probably I use the fillers at the end. So it's probably warmer, lesson content, and a filler at the end. But as I said, I mean, when I plan my lesson, I actively look for ways, I look for activities in the book that I can do in a different way. So if it's a gap fill, I look at that gap fill and think, okay, can I put that gap fill in a Kahoot? Or if it's true false question, can I put that into bingo instead of, can I make it into a game rather than just filling in the gaps? So I think that's probably the key. And I would try to always have at least one activity like this within a game. Usually at the beginning, I think the beginning and the end, they fill in that gap at the beginning of the end. But I definitely look for ways to take things out of the book and put them into a game.
We have some very positive comments. Paolo is saying, this is actually an observation. Students love Kahoot. Literally, I use it to recap topics before a written test, for example.
Yeah.
So that's another way we can use them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea. So
And
yeah,
then,
they love Kahoot. They love it. And I think the important thing to remember with Kahoot is, yes, they're playing, but they're reading the question. If they're playing in teams, they're talking together about the answer at the same time as reviewing the actual grammar. So I think they don't even notice that they're reading, and it encourages them to it builds their confidence, because I think it encourages them to not worry so much about, I don't understand. I don't understand that word in the question. They're so busy trying to answer it that they build their confidence in that way. So I think it's a really useful tool.
Yeah. And Leonora also says, thank you for sharing all these thrilling activities. I'll try one of them every time for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, fantastic.
So
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And honestly, I think, what one of the things I wanted to say as well was, I think I've gone past it, that if you teach them how to do it, so, the first few times, it takes a little bit of work from the teacher. But once you teach them how to play and you set it up as a routine, it almost runs itself. And so you walk into the classroom and they'll be asking each other questions, they'll start to engage with it themselves. And so yeah, any more?
No, I would say yes. I cannot see other questions so far, but I think it was very inspiring and I had fun as well.
Good.
So,
and you'll remember it. That's the other thing, that
yeah.
the students will remember that lesson, and if they remember it, then that's halfway to learning it. And so, should we
Yeah,
share the
sure. Yeah, so
the
this is the
yeah? Go on, you
no,
explain
no,
it.
go ahead.
No, it's simply that I think this is a PDF that was created by the British Council, I think, in Spain, and it's a fairly weighty document, and it's got a lot of the fillers that we talked about today, but a lot more of them, because the ones we focused on today were ones with no preparation in your context. Whereas this has got some more fillers for reading and speaking and writing, so you can find it. To be honest, even if you Google British Council warmers and fillers, it will probably come up, or you can find it at the link on the slide.
Exactly, and you will find the slides as well, and so you will find again the URL. But anyways, it's true. I just googled it and I found it, so it's quite easy to find.
Yeah. And it's got a lot of detailed explanation. So if any of my rules were a little bit quick, then you can double check them there maybe.
Oh, we have one question. Flavia is asking us, which one of the fillers would you start with working with a prima? I'd like to start right ahead tomorrow.
Ooh, bingo. Bingo's my favorite. I think bingo's the best game ever. If you've taught them any vocabulary, if they have any vocabulary, then they can play bingo. Or you could do the Billie Eilish song if you're doing B. If it's prima media, then you could do the song. But yeah, I love bingo. If you're doing the verb to be though, you could do the bingo. Has to be bingo.
I was thinking, I don't know, maybe also the icebreaker you told us about, the I
Yeah.
have got a cat, Peter's got a cat, because that could also help learn, like memorizing the names of the
Yes.
other students, and that can
Yeah.
also help
Exactly.
the rapport building.
Yeah. Definitely.
And
I think the problem with things like I Spy, they need quite a lot of vocabulary to be able to do things
mhm.
like that. Whereas bingo and yeah, the icebreaker is a nice one too, especially if they've got I am or he is.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, because they can say, I am, or I've got blonde hair, or I've got blue eyes and blonde hair. He's got dark hair and brown eyes. So yeah, it could be good. And
Okay,
Kahoot,
and
and
Kahoot.
Kahoot, the ultimate filler. So okay.
Okay, so Helen, it
Well,
was
should we?
really a
No,
pleasure. Thank you
thank you
very
to
much.
everybody who came. And yeah,
Yes,
I hope that you enjoy your lessons. It's not all about the students. I think the teacher has to enjoy the lesson too. And the reward, I think the reward that you get as the teacher, the satisfaction that you get when you see the students engaging with your lesson, engaging with the language and enjoying themselves. And I think when they walk out of the classroom singing something or repeating something, then I think it's really satisfying and it makes it worth the effort.
sure. And that reflects on students, of course.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a
So
win-win
yeah,
situation. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for joining us today and for your comments and questions. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I wish you a nice evening. See you soon. Bye bye. Bye, Helen.
bye.